Thank you.
Next is item number 2, AB 57. Mr. Quirk.
Hi. Congratulations. Let's see. Excuse me. Two rounds.
All right. Mr. Quirk, you may proceed.
All right. Well, thank you, Chair and members. Assembly Bill 57 would provide that if a local jurisdiction fails to either approve or deny a wireless co-location application or other siting applications within the existing time frame set forward by the Federal Communications Commission, then the application shall be deemed approved. In order to encourage the expansion of wireless networks, Congress passed the Telecommunications Act of 1996, which requires a local jurisdiction to act on a wireless facility permit within a reasonable period of time. As the entity charged with implementing the Act, the FCC issued a declaratory ruling that a reasonable period of time is 90 days to process co-location applications and 150 days to process all other applications. While it has been challenged, the United States Supreme Court has upheld the FCC's timeframes as within the FCC's rulemaking authority. However, despite this ruling, many local jurisdictions still fail to adhere to federally required timelines. In such cases, the wireless provider's only option is to sue the city or county to have the permit acted on, which can lead to even more delay and is something that the providers are reluctant to do because they'll have to deal with the city again. Such delay has implications for public safety, with 911 calls now coming predominantly from cell phones, economic growth, and the ability for many individuals to access the Internet. Members, wireless infrastructure is essential to satisfy the need for more and more bandwidth and to extend the benefits of wireless communications into as many communities as possible. Again, this bill simply adds teeth to the existing FCC timeline, which is a modest step to ensure that California has the necessary telecommunications infrastructure to provide services to its citizens and to compete on a national and global scale. Thank you. I have two expert witnesses, Steve Carlson with the Wireless Association and Rudy Reyes with Verizon.
We have a motion from Mr. Leonard, second from Ms. Gonzalez. Witnesses in support.
Mr. Chair, members, and Madam Vice Chair, Steve Carlson. I'm a Government Affairs Counsel, California Government Affairs Counsel for CTI. We represent all the wireless carriers, the handset providers, operating system providers, most of which are here right in California. There's been a lot of conversation about the process, but I'd like to begin by providing the committee with some information about the industry and then talk about the impacts of the current permitting system, which we respectfully submit has been and continues to be an obstacle to the delivery of broadband of the advanced wireless services customers demand, public safety needs, legislature expects, and business and economy depend on. A brief history of how we got here may be useful. In the 80s and early 90s, there used to be only two carriers per market, one from the incumbent phone company, the other by lottery. In 1993, at that time a stunning policy choice, the government decided to auction off the radio spectrum, which is the raw material for wireless services. This brought billions into government coffers and gave the purchasers the privilege of spending many billions more in building out individual, competitive, private wireless networks, the cell sites and wireless infrastructure that brings us here today. At last count, this was $430 billion of cumulative capital investment to this point, half of which has been in just the last 10 years, which is why the FCC granted the shot clock petition that Assemblymember Quick indicated, recognizing that these delays and challenges were contrary to the public policy that the federal government wanted to push. A couple of numbers. 36.4 million wireless subscriptions in California out of 38 million people, 10% of all the subscriptions in the U.S. 1 in 3 California households are wireless only. 70% of 911 calls are wireless, and as the chair knows, we are working with the Select Committee on Local Emergency Preparedness, OES, and first responders on location accuracy, other improvements to the 911 system, the fundamental underpinnings of which are robust wireless networks. 10% of the population accesses broadband only through wireless, and that's a higher number in lower-income populations. 45 million Americans use wireless as their primary Internet access. Mobile providers serve 68% of all broadband users in California. A few years ago, apps didn't exist, and now it's a $20 to $25 billion industry. 1/3 of all app jobs are here in California. So the benefit to the economy and to the public safety is clear. What we want to do here is encourage collaboration. We think that there's a way for us to work together with local governments that doesn't resort to litigation. The shot clock has been, time frame has been in place for 6 years. It's not a surprise. So we can deliver to our customers who are residents of local governments the broadband and advanced wireless services that all need. Thank you.
Thank you. Rudy.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Rudy Reyes, Vice President of Government Affairs for Verizon in California. Thank you for allowing me to testify. I will be brief. As you heard from the author and Mr. Carlson, consumer demand for more and faster mobile broadband is very high and is growing exponentially. This is driving companies like Verizon to invest heavily in California's wireless infrastructure. This is a good thing for California, for our consumers, for our customers, for public safety, for jobs, and the economy. To meet this explosive customer demand, providers must build new cell sites. This, in turn, requires the cooperation of our partners in local government, who have the absolute power to approve or deny applications for new cell towers with only few restrictions under federal law. Verizon is committed to working in good faith with localities on these applications, answering all their questions, addressing any concerns they have, and complying with all lawful aesthetic or stealthing ordinances that localities may adopt. Indeed, federal law requires this, and nothing in this bill changes that. But the bottom line issue here is one of timeliness. We need our local partners to make decisions in a timely manner. If the answer is yes, then great. If the answer is no, we need to know that too, so that we can address the concerns as quickly as possible and get to yes. But too often our experience has been that localities fail to give us an answer within the time periods required by federal law. This is the problem, and it is unlawful, and it is what this bill is intended to address. The deemed approved remedies specified in this bill will incentivize local governments to do what they're already supposed to be doing today. The opposition will argue that this is an extreme remedy, one that even the FCC declined to adopt, and that they need more time to address legitimate issues that may come up in the review process. We can address these misunderstandings in Q&A if it pleases the committee. But these arguments obscure the larger point. Local governments retain all existing rights under federal law to approve or deny wireless facility siting applications within the FCC's time limitations. And they may take longer if there is a legitimate reason to do so. But they are not allowed to simply ignore the shot clock and fail to make a decision without providing a valid reason. All this bill does is specify the remedy when they violate federal law in this manner. In closing, this is a sensible, narrowly tailored bill that will promote compliance with federal law, speed the delivery of faster and more mobile broadband to consumers, which they are demanding in unprecedented numbers, benefit public safety, and grow our economy. I respectfully urge your aye vote.
Thank you. Further witnesses in support, name and organization.
Members, Bill Devine with AT&T. We support the bill.
Thank you.
Michael Shaw, California Manufacturers and Technology Association, in support.
Good afternoon. Chris Rosa, representing Silicon Valley Leadership Group, in support.
Kara Bush with Tech America, in support. Andrea DeVoe with TechNet in support.
Susan Lipper with T-Mobile in support.
Valerie Nera, California Chamber of Commerce in support.
Brenda Coleman, Sprint in support.
Jason Eichert with Edelstein, Gilbert, Robeson, and Smith on behalf of Qualcomm in support.
Other witnesses in support? Witnesses in opposition?
There's two.
Good afternoon, Chair and members of the committee. I'm Kiana Bess on behalf of the California State Association of Counties. Unfortunately, here in opposition to AB 57 today. CSAC and my local government partners fully support greater access to broadband services, and we absolutely recognize the integral role that communications technology, and particularly broadband and wireless, play in improving education, public safety, healthcare, and driving a strong economy. However, there are very important reasons that local governments must retain adequate time and authority to review applications and work collaboratively with wireless carriers to build new wireless facilities or co-locate equipment, not the least of which is public safety and the public process at the local level. Unfortunately, AB 57's deemed approved rule on any new siting or co-location facility puts local governments in a difficult position if they fail to act within federally established timeframes. To be clear, the deemed approved rule goes beyond AB 50, or in AB 57 goes beyond federal law and regulations. Per the declaratory rulings already referenced in testimony today, deemed approved only applies to a very small subset of co-locations and modifications to existing wireless facilities, and we don't believe that this deemed approved extension to all applications, regardless of size and scope, is an appropriate remedy. As also noted by the support, it is true that the FCC purposely did not apply the deemed approved remedy in their declaratory rulings. Counties are committed to finding viable and community-appropriate designs for wireless telecommunications facilities which provide robust and competitive broadband service while also protecting the community. From our perspective, local governments do just that, and in a timely manner. While we hear industry experts allege that counties and cities drag their feet to act on approving these applications, we have been given zero specific examples or evidence that warrant such proposed changes as contained in AB 57. I would like to thank the author's office for taking the time to meet with us to understand our concerns, but unfortunately, CSAC believes that this is a fundamental difference in perspective and that federal laws and regulations are sufficient on the topic that strike the right balance that incentivize widespread broadband deployment while retaining appropriate control over public safety and community concerns.
Hello, Chair and members. My name is Omar Masri, wireless planner for the City and County of San Francisco. We apologize for the late letter to the Committee of Opposition. The City took an official position this morning in opposition, and for the record, I'm a member of American Planning Association. This position of opposition is necessary because the bill would create an automatic approval path for any type of wireless facility, including, say, a brand new 100-foot steel tower in a residential neighborhood, for failure to meet state-imposed time limits based on suggestions by the FCC. This is problematic for San Francisco and other cities because we take great care to ensure that new facilities meet our design and historic preservation guidelines. AB 57 references a 2009 FCC decision where the FCC set a reasonable time period to make a decision was based on the type of application. So 150 days for a brand new site, 60 days for a small change, and 90 days for a fairly major change. In 2009, the FCC refused to adopt the wireless industry's request to issue a deemed approved rule. Now, in 2014, the FCC did create an automatic approval path, but only for a limited subset of changes to existing wireless facilities, such as adding 10 feet of height to a wooden telephone pole in front of your house in order to add more antennas and equipment boxes. However, the FCC again in 2014 specifically declined to impose a deemed approved remedy for any type of wireless facility because they recognize the importance of balancing national interest in wireless with local interest in carefully planned development. For this reason, because AB 57 relies on older 2009 guidance, it would exceed federal mandates, place new burdens on local governments, and severely limit a local jurisdiction's ability to regulate aesthetics. Further, AB 57 indicates that a wireless facility is a statewide concern and not a municipal affair. This ambiguous language raises concerns about the bill's intent and ramifications. AB 57 does reference public notice, but not other crucial due process elements of the California Permit Streamlining Act. AB 57 is silent with respect to CEQA. This raises concerns about our ability to provide complete environmental review for common but complicated wireless issues such as historic preservation, geotechnical, and archaeological review. Simply put, AB 57 appears incomplete and would actually force many cities to deny an inadequate or incomplete design just to meet deadlines, instead of doing what we prefer to do and working collaboratively with wireless carriers and property owners to find viable and community-appropriate design which still provides robust and competitive broadband service. In San Francisco, there are over 1,033 commercial facilities and 46 square miles. In the last 24 months alone, the city has approved 35 large sites, primarily in residential and historic neighborhoods like Telegraph Hill. In the next few months, we will see the deployment of over 400 small cells, primarily on city-owned light poles. We thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Further witnesses in opposition? Name and organization only, please.
Mr. Chair and members, Jolena Vorse on behalf of the Urban Counties Caucus, also in opposition.
Jonathan Clay on behalf of the County of San Diego in opposition.
Lauren De Valencia representing the American Planning Association, opposition.
Paul Smith, Rural Counties, also in opposition.
Jennifer Whiting with the League of Cities, also in opposition.
Good afternoon, Kiara Ross on behalf of the City of Burbank in opposition.
Thank you. Any other witnesses in opposition? Questions or comments from the committee? Mr. Chu?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First of all, let me start by thanking the author for bringing this forward. I know this has been a difficult subject, one that I think many of us have been grappling with. On the one hand, I think there's no one in this room who does not want to make sure that we all have access to wireless facilities. On the other hand, I think you've heard about some of the issues that we're grappling with. I had a couple of questions that delve into some of the issues that were raised by the committee analysis. First, this is a bill that is described as codifying federal law, but it appears to be providing automatic approval not just to modifications to existing facilities, but to new ones, which does seem to extend beyond where federal law is. And as was stated in the analysis, could you explain why you believe it's necessary to go beyond the requirements and the regulations promulgated by the FCC?
Yeah, the FCC did not rule on the 90 or 150 days because it didn't have the authority to do so. Congress needs to give them that authority, and did not deem that the bill that set this up had given them that authority. We here in the state can do that by law, and that's one of the reasons why I'm bringing the bill forward.
Which I appreciate, and I think we can have, differences of opinion on that. I think, though, the suggestion that this bill is codifying what federal law says, I just want to make it clear that we are talking about extending where federal law is as opposed to what the status quo is. Second question.
I'm sorry if I. That certainly should be clear.
Okay. Second question I have is around whether or not this issue of wireless facilities ought to be a statewide concern, because I think, again, we all have a statewide interest in ensuring that we all have access to wireless facilities. But on the other hand, I think the location and siting of these issues feels like a local concern. There was a question raised about whether there have been specific examples of what is happening in California and whether there is a widespread practice that warrants a legislative fix. And this was, again, described in the committee analysis. Could you describe the specific examples and what sort of issues have come up on this?
I have 9 examples here. Let me just read one so I don't take up too much of the time. For example, in Thousand Oaks, the city of Thousand Oaks in Ventura County has obtained shot clock extensions for 3 new sites over the past year, while requiring review of potential alternative locations on water tanks or park property. The city typically requires a pre-application process, and then, after filing an application, lengthy exploration of new alternatives, and particularly those that might provide the city with rental income. This has led to repeated delays, and I can read more, but it's probably I'll assure you I have 8 more examples just right here, and I can bring up more.
So, again, I very much appreciate the discussion. I also want to thank the wireless industry for conversations with my office on this, as I had conveyed to both the author and the industry. At this time, I'm not able to support this. As you heard a little bit about our city, we have approved 1,000 of these sites in our 7x7 square miles. Just this year and past year, we have dozens of more of these that have come online. We have 400 small sites that are moving forward. Our city has, I think, a very good record of working with wireless providers on these issues, and I share the concerns that this would make the bill much harder. That being said, again, I'm happy to continue discussions to see if we can address this as the bill moves through the process.
Certainly.
Ms. Waldron.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You touched on it a little bit in the question just previous. Not being an expert on the FCC or any of the federal regulations, within the bill, and I'm not sure who the best person to answer this would be.
Well,
the committee analysis does talk about tolling the shot clock under certain circumstances and then picking it back up. Within the bill, as it is, if an issue does arise, is there some leeway for an extension of time? Is
yes.
that still within FCC regulations?
So, for example, if something comes up which, for example, that the design didn't meet the standards of the city, they can simply deny approval. They have the ability to deny any time. There are also chances for extension. For example, if the city in the first 30 days comes forward and said this requires a review, then the shot clock is stopped while the secret review goes on and then started again after. So there are other circumstances as well.
Okay. No, that touches exactly, because I was wondering about environmental review or other things like that, because sometimes these sightings are existing with an ongoing application of development or something like that.
Yeah,
so,
but
okay.
At any time, if something comes up that the city sees suddenly that it doesn't meet their standards, they can simply, at that time, deny the application and just the thing can start over again.
Mr. Alejo.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm supportive of this bill because that's our future is going to be more wireless technology. Customers asking for a broader, more sophisticated level of service, and this is the future of our wireless technology. But I just wanted to share some concerns because I've seen from the local government's point of view that some of these sightings for this technology has become more politically charged for a wide range of reasons. But I think just 2 suggestions. As these efforts go before local governments and city council members and supervisors really have to deal with this when they get their constituents and upset about a particular sighting of one of these antennas. One thing is the crew or the representatives that are representing the different technology companies would be very helpful in their approach with local governments, hearing communities out and trying to address those concerns, because in my district, there's been some companies who have come in and the local team who went before didn't help the process in the way, the words they use and in their approach in having these charged city council or planning commissioner meetings. That was one thing. And these folks, the teams are usually the folks who go and deal with a lot of government, so they should be the most professional, the most respectful in their approach in hearing communities out. And I think it helps facilitate the process and tones down the charged nature of some of these discussions. And then number 2 is trying to find a win-wins, sites that are in the vicinity, but perhaps are reduce the the charged political nature of the siting. For example, in my hometown, there was one of these projects that wanted to be put right in the middle of a relatively one of the newer parks, and the neighborhoods were saying, well, we shouldn't have this right in the middle of our park. Maybe there was a location within the vicinity to the side of the roadway that would probably have worked just as good, but it wasn't as in your face as putting in the park of one of the neighborhoods. So for me, these were just like very easy but real examples where a local council member, local planning commission is struggling because it's so charged because of something that could have been done to adjust it or just some of the community concerns, but yet achieve the ultimate goal, which is having that particular antenna put in that particular part of the city. That's all I wanted to express, but I'm supportive of this bill.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. I want to first begin by thanking you, Mr. Quirk, for your hard work on this. You're always good to deal with, and all the issues that you've taken up and your ability to adjust as time has gone on through this process. I want to commend you and say thank you. There is a huge and growing demand for these services in all of our regions. And I think, the point that I think needs to be stressed is this bill will not mandate any decision. It will not mandate a yes. It will not mandate a no. It will just require that local governments comply with the law, which seems to me to be eminently reasonable. It also, and frankly, even on that front, it still will allow for delays in circumstances. So even that, I think, is, this is far from being a draconian bill. So I'm pleased to support this today. I think it's something that's necessary, and to make sure that local governments are complying with the law, but at the same time giving local governments flexibility to do what's particular to their cities and counties and regions, to comply with what the local wants and desires there are. So pleased to support this today. Mr. Quirk, we do have a motion and a second, and you may close.
All right. First of all, to the opposition, certainly they're interpreting the law somewhat differently than we are. I'm glad to sit down with them and to go over and make sure that, for example, CEQA's, we do not believe CEQA's preempted, but we will make absolutely sure that we all agree that it's not preempted, that certainly design and architectural guidelines that have been in place for many years in these cities must be respected, and if there's any question about that, we will definitely fix it in the bill. And then finally, I would just ask for your aye vote.
Okay. We have, thank you, Mr. Quirk. We have a motion and a second. I'd ask the clerk to call the roll.
The motion is do pass. Mainshine.
Aye.
Mainshine, aye. Gonzalez. Aye. Gonzalez, aye. Alejo. Aye. Alejo, aye. Chu.
Not voting.
Chu, not voting. Cooley.
Aye.
Cooley, aye. Gordon.
Not voting.
Gordon, not voting. Holden. Linder.
Aye.
Linder, aye. Waldron. Aye. Waldron, aye.
Your measure is out 6-0.
Thank you, committee and staff.